Boom. We are pre-recorded today, ladies and gentlemen. I have another wonderful guest for you today, Peter Saddington. And this is one of the next steps in the way we do the podcast. A lot of you guys have been recommending guests, and Peter is one of these recommendations. So I'm very excited to be able to discover your guys' interests as well. So Peter, tell us, how are you doing this afternoon?
Thanks so much. I appreciate being with you. Arcane Bear, Tiho Bear. It's great to be on your podcast for the first time.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We were just having a great warm-up chat. And one of the things I want to do is introduce you by asking you, how did we end up here? What brought you to this space, and how did we end up communicating, basically? Because you've got a well-rounded voice in this sector. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how we got to this point.
Great question. Well, the TLDR, the short answer is that I fell in love with cryptocurrency at the end of 2016, 2017. Now, I'm best known for purchasing Bitcoin in 2011 and ending up buying the world's first Bitcoin Lamborghini Huracan with Bitcoin in 2017. So that's what I'm best known for in the broader crypto space. But I really fell in love with cryptocurrency in 2016, 2017, and I switched my entire life around to build and work in this world. And so over the last 3 years, I've built up a great community. We've built 7 products for the cryptocurrency space. I'm currently working on my magnum opus, which is yen.io, which is the world's first, and I'm proud to say this, the world's first multi-exchange cryptocurrency exchange and community platform. And so I've been working heavily in the crypto space for the last 3 years. And so our communities collided, and they said, hey, this guy's a great guy. Peter, you seem like you'd have a great conversation with him. We both, from what I can tell, love being self-learners, self-educated. We love inspiring and encouraging and helping other people. So I think that's probably why our communities clashed and said, Tiho and Peter, you probably need to talk together.
Beautifully said, Peter. I love it. You know, this is a really interesting side point there. I like how you introed with the best known for buying a Lamborghini with Bitcoin. Tell us when you bought your first Bitcoin, not because I care about what price you got in, but mostly I want to know what attracted you to the sector in those early days.
Oh, great question. I bought my first Bitcoin in November of 2011 at $1.52. Now, there's a little bit of history before that. In October, I'll never forget this, life-changing moment. In October of 2011, I read an Ars Technica article. Now, some of you guys might be like, Ars Technica, what the hell is that? But Ars Technica, highly technical, online magazine. And I read an Ars Technica article in October of 2011 talking about how this technology stack, okay, I'm a technologist, I'm an engineer, I'm a developer. And they talked about how this technology stack lost 90% of its value in like a 2-month period. And so for me as a technologist, I was imminently curious. I'm like, wait. Technology stacks like .NET, C#, C++, Perl, ActionScript, technology stacks don't lose value. They're just technology stacks. And so it was the way that they posed that question. It was the way that they posed this issue that got me down the rabbit hole literally for like 30 days. I lost weight. I was just consuming this thing. I was like, how can a technology stack lose value? How can it go from $100 to like $5? None of this makes any sense. And as I dug into Satoshi Nakamoto's white paper, I dug into the Bitcoin forums, Bitcoin Talk, as I learned about all these massive hacks and this application of this financial application layer on top of a technology stack, I was consumed. And so for an entire month, all I did was eat, read, sleep, shit. I don't know if I can curse, but shit. That's all I thought about was this thing called Bitcoin. And finally, in November of 2011, I was like, I gotta buy some. I got a laptop. I can mine this stuff. And I got deep into it. I bought some. I spent a lot of time in the dark web, kind of utilizing and experimenting with it. But it actually took me from 2011 to 2016 to finally rewrite my life and actually start building in it. So one of the biggest regrets that I have is not that I didn't buy more. One of the biggest regrets that I have is I didn't start earlier. And it's been a long journey. It's been a great journey. And I've finally been able to really blossom in the crypto space and be fully me in this world that I love. I love cryptocurrency. I love the fundamentals. I love the philosophy behind it. I love all the ideas that Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they are, put together. I really think Bitcoin and blockchain is, not can be, is going to be a future that we will have to interface with. And so I figure I could become pretty wealthy as long as I stick with it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sentiment too. I think to interject, aside from the owning Bitcoin, is the building in the space. You know, I have had this conversation with a few people, but generally investments are how people continue to maintain and grow their wealth after they've produced a valuable product and service. Still creating equitable products and services for humanity is one of the most impactful way, not just for your pocketbook, but you having purpose in your life. You just own all this Bitcoin with a bunch of money and you're not doing anything with yourself that's very valuable, you're not going to be all that happy. So tell us about this transition from, you know, maintaining and managing into going into the building phase and some of the projects that you've worked on leading up to yen.io.
Great question. Well, so I was a corporate consultant for over 12 years. And so I traveled internationally, wrote a couple books, went on international speaking tours and these types of things. And I trained over 60,000 people in Agile and Scrum software development. Now, you don't need to know anything about that. It's just a quick startup-esque type of way of making sure that you build products quickly, you validate your hypotheses, you learn from them, you get feedback, and then you continue to build. The entire undergirding philosophy of Agile is the faster you build, the faster you learn, the more informed decisions you can make on the next iteration. And so I had reached, not from my own personal view, I had reached an upper echelon of my success in that arena. After spending 12 years traveling the world, I was like, you know what, I've kind of bled this out for everything that I need out of it. And Bitcoin and blockchain was always in the back of my mind. I was dollar cost averaging for years, and I still am dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. And so for me, I was like, you know what, this is a technology. I'm an engineer. I can do this. I know how to do this. I know how to build. And so I began building, but I started with a YouTube channel because I wanted to understand better what the cryptocurrency world was like and what were they talking about? What do I need to talk about? What do I need to learn? And so in late 2016, early 2017, I started a YouTube channel called Bite Size Bitcoin. And I grew that to about 80,000 subscribers. Then YouTube censored me and deleted 1,800 of my videos. And then I made Decentralize TV, which I'm more known for now, which is I think about has 80,000 subscribers on YouTube. And we just continued to get feedback from the community and ask them, hey, what do you guys need? What do you guys want? I can build stuff. And so we started out by building the bitcoin.pub, which is a Reddit type of forum where people can gather and commune and talk. From there, we received more feedback that they wanted a coin market cap alternative. So we built coinpuffs.com. And then after that, I'm a voracious reader. I used Feedly for all of my news. I have to read about 50 to about 80 articles in the morning, or I skim them really these days. But I wanted to build something better. And so we got more feedback from the community, and they said, well, we want to know what you're reading, Peter. So from there, we built cryptoyum.com. So it was that the world's first cryptocurrency news reader. And we just kept building stuff. Eventually, we ended up finding out that one of the best things that we could build is a community-powered tool, or a tool to power communities in the cryptocurrency space, while also being the world's first multi-exchange platform, which ended up being yen.io. And so I'll give you guys our tagline for yen.io. It's we want to provide wealth-building tools or community-building tools for everyone everywhere. So anyone in the world can join yen.io, plug in, grow your community, have the tools to manage them, communicate with them, work with them, be transparent with them, and obviously level up in life. And so a big thing for me is that I want to help everyone level up in life. And so building a platform for other people to do that and have a place to gather with their community, censorship free, by the way, was really important. And so we are embarking on that. We are in closed beta right now, so you can go to beta.yen.io to check it out, or yen.io to check it out. But we're really excited because we have about 1,500 users in our closed beta, and we've already transacted close to $4 million through our multi-exchange platform. So our hypotheses are working. People really love the system, and we're really excited to see where it's going to take us into the rest of 2019.
Wow, you know, that's fascinating. I actually think I got an invite from someone to join the beta group, and I get so many emails in my inbox. I feel bad that I didn't jump on that right away now. It's hard to tell sometimes. I actually recently got a virtual assistant to help me comb through and find the more valuable things, because it's just so difficult to keep up with.
I wouldn't blame you. Frankly, I wouldn't click on anything with my face on it. And the reason is because of buying the world's first Lamborghini Huracan with Bitcoin, which isn't here, by the way, but it's in that picture right there. I am like the poster boy for like Bitcoin scams, unfortunately. If you type in Bitcoin bro in Google, I am the first hit. I'm like the #1 picture for Bitcoin bro. And it didn't help that we had magazines like Forbes and Salon and Yahoo Finance talking about me as being the Bitcoin bro. And so I'm on fake ads. People send me that stuff all the time. I'm on fake ads and Chinese ads and Russian ads just because I got my face in a Lamborghini behind me. They're like, you can make $1,000 a day. It's like people send me that stuff. I'm like, yeah, don't click on that.
Oh, that's funny. So how did the Bitcoin bro come up? Was this something you were saying in your earlier videos? Did you get dubbed this by the community?
Let's just say there was a reporter that had a particular angle that she wanted to write about, and it was a FUD piece about Bitcoin bros and about toxic male culture, and so she had put her laser focus on me because Forbes and all these major magazines and KBS News and CBS News and Yahoo Finance were all doing articles on me talking about purchasing the Bitcoin Lamborghini. And so during about that same time, she had this vendetta and she wanted to talk about toxic masculinity. And she highlighted me as being the #1 Bitcoin bro out there. And because of thanks to Google and the algorithm, I am the #1 hit for Bitcoin bro in a negative connotation. But I being me, I don't see that as a bad thing. I love it. If you type in Bitcoin bro and you see my face, I hope you end up on one of our free platforms that we built for the community in the world. And you know, if you get into cryptocurrency because of me, great. That's a win. I'll take it. Bitcoin bro and everything.
Beautiful, Peter. That's such a funny one. So I don't want to dive into the Lamborghini talk too much, but it's fascinating for me mostly because of the transactional purpose. So when did you buy what year did you buy the Lamborghini in?
2017 in October, and I just sold it. So I had it for 2 years. So yeah.
Nice. Okay, that was the perfect time too, because right near some of the highs there. Good to take advantage. And this is one of the other things I don't think people recognize either, is that you need to be able to diversify your portfolio. And although a car is somewhat of a depreciative asset, it still holds value. You know, people collect all sorts of crazy things. So, you know, as often I would tell people that wasn't necessarily a smart decision, but you probably made a wise decision by kind of diversifying, playing around and trying out new things. So I guess
I'm sorry. I just want to interject. I think I got a lot of bad press about it. Not that I care about bad press. Any press is good press.
Yeah.
But you know, I want to clarify that for the record. I got 2 years of great smiles in that car, and I'm an exotic car guy. I got a race car that you can't see on the other side of this. I'm for me, the investment, and I bought it when Bitcoin was at $5,500. So, you know, anyone could do the math and say, oh, you know, you should have waited or whatever. Who cares? It was a great opportunity. And this is the real reason. It was a great opportunity, Tiho, to show the world that, yes, you can. You can spend 42, 45 Bitcoins on a car. It's possible. There are new opportunities out there, and there are vendors, there are companies, there are organizations and institutions that are now willing to take Bitcoin for almost anything. And so for me, this was a kind of a double-edged thing. I love exotic cars. I wanted to buy one with Bitcoin. And secondly, as someone in cryptocurrency who builds for this space, I wanted to show the world that, yes, you can transact with this stuff. It's not just, you know, digital vaporware. It's a guy. I sent the guy 20 Bitcoins as a down payment. And then after that had verified and everything went through, I drove over them and I gave them the rest. And it literally took like 12 minutes to buy a Lamborghini with Bitcoin. Like, and it's all videotaped. It's all, you can go to the YouTube channel and find it. I mean, like, who in the world can buy a car in less than 12 minutes physically? You can do it now with Bitcoin. You can do it now with cryptocurrency. Totally true.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Again, I like that it was later on too, because in the early days, like 2011 or 12, it wouldn't have had the same ring to it, and well, and also it would have been a cost of many more Bitcoin. But the transactional purpose, I think, is still fundamentally something that goes over a lot of people's heads. You know, they're like, oh, you can't use it for coffee. It's, well, money's, and as gold, I have a gold chain around my neck. What's nice about it is that it is somewhat illiquid. You don't want it to move super quickly because it actually stops you from spending it on ridiculous things sometimes. Now, like I said, I appreciate everyone has their own loves. I spend ridiculous amounts of money on instruments. I have all these custom instruments that I have in my house, and that's my thing. So I think everyone should be investing themselves into what they enjoy, and what makes you smile. So that's the first thing. But secondarily, yeah, that transactional reference point was so huge, because as someone who's done international business, I know what it takes to maintain a corporation and do all your due diligence and have your certificates of good standing and pay your lawyers and your accountants just to be able to send money, to have it not send on the motherfucking weekends. There's someone in the middle that's like taking the day off, and then you have time zones that break. So to do a wire, maybe a wire transfer in an offshore bank account from Hong Kong, you pay for the Lamborghini, you're talking multiple days and weeks and tens of thousands of dollars in back end costs just to keep it going.
Totally. And that, like Bitcoin, if I can interject like some word association for everyone out there listening, Bitcoin is the ultimate disintermediary. Bitcoin is the ultimate disintermediary. One of the kind of intrinsic goals of Bitcoin, if I can inject this into the Bitcoin philosophy, is to disintermediate all the nonsense. I don't need to have to go to these intermediaries to get what I want, to get products, get services. Bitcoin will allow me to not circumvent, but Bitcoin will allow me to go straight to the source and say, hey, I'm going to pay you. Give me my product. And so I think this is a great, you're talking about building a business. You got to talk to lawyers, you got to talk to bankers, you got to make sure that you get all your paperwork filed. I mean, like Bitcoin in the future, maybe not our future, but Bitcoin in the future should be able to disintermediate all of this nonsense so that we can just live life freely, unfettered, and unchained. And so, yeah, buying a Lamborghini with Bitcoin, totally a great example of a peer-to-peer transaction. Totally doable without any of the nonsense. He just gave me the title and I bloop, 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 sent him some Bitcoin. Awesome. And one thing I want to talk about, because you brought up coffee. Coffee is one of the worst examples. And they're always trying to use coffee. Oh, you can't buy coffee with Bitcoin. You don't want to buy coffee with Bitcoin, noob cake. You don't want to do that. You have, like, most people have the average of 5 in America, 5 credit cards in their wallet, sometimes up to 7 or more. You use different credit cards for different purchases. Okay. You use this Visa to buy coffee. You use this Amex for bigger purchases. Same thing with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. You use different cryptos, different digital monies for different things. And so when people say, oh, you can't buy coffee with Bitcoin, the answer is, yeah, you shouldn't. You should probably just use your Visa. You should probably just use your PayPal or Venmo or something like that, because that's what that digital currency is for. Right? So each digital currency has different means, different reasons that you should use it. I just wanted to put that out there, because I hate hearing oh, you can't buy a coffee with Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, you'd be stupid if you did.
Yeah, it's just an ineffectual way to look at it. It's one of the things that the maximalists don't make any sense to me about, is that it's, I've been in business and owned equity and physical assets for quite some time, and one of the things I think people commonly overlook is that even though Bitcoin is working on the money sector, there are all these other equitable private ownership areas that need this type of security and transparency, whether it's owning property or owning equity in business and shares as well. The stock market is trite with all these problems, and yet there's very few people that are aiming at, well, hey, these technologies can solve that. The idea of like, you don't own your keys, you don't own, what about not owning your home if you don't own your keys? And you don't own the deed to your property either. These were wartime standards to try to destroy the registry of the property, because we knew you could send the entire country into capital dismay, because some of the first basis points of actual private equity capital is, do you own that physical asset? And it's not just about money, it's about private equity and property ownership as well. So you made a very great point there with, these types of technology stacks offer very different solutions depending on how we focus them. What are some of the interesting areas that you've seen? I mean, like I said, I was silly not to jump on the yen.io invite, and maybe we'll sort that out afterwards. So I can play around. But what are some of the other interesting implications that you see, maybe not just blockchain technology, but these types of distributed ledgers going in and disrupting in the future?
There's a lot of, and these aren't obviously always marketed out to the general masses, but as one of the founders of yen.io, hopefully to be soon decentralized platform that where people can grow their communities and exchange with people peer to peer, there's a lot of personal affection that I have to building this. And these ideas stem from my personal philosophies, my personal worldviews, the way that I see the world. And there are a lot of things that I appreciate from Bitcoin, like censorship resistance, like decentralization, making sure that code is law, that things can be verified on the blockchain. These types of things are really important to me. And so building the NIO has been an eye-opening adventure. And the reason is because I'm learning more and more and more about the constraints of centralized systems, censorship, control. Like I didn't know, and you can excuse my naivete, but being in America, you generally think you're relatively free in most regards. And in most cases you are. It's been interesting. The stranglehold and the noose of digital freedom has been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And until you build in it, until you listen to the voices of the community and the voices of the cryptocurrency world, and they're saying, Peter, I was shut out of this. They banned me from this. They deleted my account from this. And I'm like, well, I hear about this on the news, but wow, this is far more rampant than I think anyone really understands, because we have people joining our network, yen.io, every day who are DMing me and saying, I built up my Twitter account for 9 years and they just banned me and suspended me and they deleted all my stuff. I'm like, what? That's crazy. So we think this stuff affects people far away. I think once you start building in this, it helps you realize the true, I don't want to say enemy, but the risks at the door. The risks at the door is we are losing our digital freedoms. We're losing our voice. We're losing our ability to commune and communicate with other people around the world. And in a lot of ways, it's so filtered that we're not able to really see reality. Now, I don't want to go off into the ether here too fast, but I'm telling you, our realities are being designed. Our realities are being pushed to us by these major corporations and these major machines, and we're not able to see clearly. And I think that's by design. And so building in this space has really opened my eyes to how important, and maybe I'm over-exaggerating my importance here, but the importance of builders and entrepreneurs like yourself and myself who want to stay in this and help and grow people and help them learn about the digital freedoms that they can have with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and blockchain. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because it's kind of bleeding out of me, part of my heart's motive. I want people to have freedom in their speech. I want to have the ability for people to access all sorts of resources all over the world without constraints. You were telling me before we even press record, really, some of the constraints that you've had with America and how they've not allowed you to cross borders. Like, I mean, America is a prison, and people are like, oh, that's super negative. No. We're like, living in America, I have to give you a passport. I have to pay. I have to go through screening. Like, why can't I leave whenever I want to leave? This is like, it's a reverse jail. I can't leave until you pat me down, touch everything in me, and then scan all my stuff, and then tell me that I have to do a re-verification of that battery pack that was in my backpack. It's craziness. The amount of freedoms that we have are diminishing day by day by day by day. And I think it's the slow attrition. And soon we're going to wake up, we're going to be, wow, I truly am a slave. I've got a collar around my neck and I didn't even know it.
Yeah, the ability for this technology to really move itself into the place of the governance ecosystem, I think, is what's interesting as well. You know, a lot of people, it's interesting too, because you hear the word consensus come up quite often, and consensus is not a very good structural format for what we decide is true. You know, for a very long time, it was consensus that the world was flat. There's a lot of things we've had consensus on, and we've been totally fucking way, way wrong about. And the difficult part here is that, well, first off, again, in the politics and in the areas of rule and regulation, we have consensus about all sorts of things. You know, the idea of marijuana being illegal for so long, regardless of if it had medical benefits or not, was just totally absurd. I mean, you're allowed to legally drink alcohol and smoke tobacco, which have no evidence of being good for you whatsoever. Yet, I agree with you here, the powers, there seems to be by design. Now, I'll make a quick suggestion, and this is also I'll turn into a question, is for those of you that haven't seen the film They Live, it's this 1980s cult classic piece of being able to tell the difference between the world that's been created for you and what's actually taking place right now. And I don't necessarily suspect that it's aliens, but it seems to be crony capitalism, and a lot of this is enforced through centralized governance. So what about the governance sector and areas of, like, yeah, because I see a lot of this going municipal, where people should have their own freedom of choice in much smaller groups and areas, so that way, if these people want to smoke and these people don't want to smoke, they can have their own cultural separation. Have you seen
Absolutely.
anything like this start to pop up in your vision?
Absolutely, 100%. Actually, I had talked about this on the video probably a couple of years ago, that I see the digital revolution taking roots tangibly in your world in the future. And what do I mean by this? Local governments. I can see townships with the breakdown of technology, the access to technology, breaking down those walls, allowing people to get into it more easily. In the future, I totally see towns having their own coin, their own cryptocurrency, something that is controlled, probably that's not the right word, managed and supported through decentralization in that township. They can do voting. They can make sure that they're verified, that their vote counts, these types of things. I can totally see, and I don't know if it's going to be in our lifetime. Maybe I'm being too hopeful here for the future in a lifetime I won't see, but I can totally see a reality, one version of reality, where each town all over the world has their own cryptocurrency that allows them to manage their own lives within that bubble. Let's be honest, 99% of the time, you don't really exit that local economy, that local community. You really don't, unless you're a world traveler, and people like to use excuses there, but let's be intellectually honest. 99% of most people don't go farther than a 5 to 10 mile radius around their local economy. And that's where life really happens, number one. And in number two, that's really the area that we can influence. And so from a governance standpoint, I think cryptocurrency and blockchain and governance on the blockchain is awesome if we can get it out of you said crony capitalism. I like to say that it's human nature to when you get more power to want to control more people. One of the reasons why I don't vote, and maybe I'm going too far and volunteering too much, one of the reasons I don't vote for any type of big government is because I don't share the values of anyone who wants to be a politician in big government. And the value that they have that I will never have is that they want to tell other people how to live their lives. I'm not interested in that. I'd rather have conversations within my local government, within the community around me, to say, hey, how can we make our local government, our local region, our local community better? How can we invest in where I'm spending 99% of my time? That's what matters to me. And I do not share, I'll make it fundamentally clear. I do not share the values of big government officials who want to tell me how to live my life and make broad sweeping strokes across a 300 million person population. It just doesn't work for me. So I'm more into local governments. I'm more into local governance and having a say in that, because I think in reality, that's where we can have the most impact in people's lives.
Yeah, I see this future evolving too, we're probably 10 to 20, 30 years out into the evolution of some of this stuff, but it just makes more sense. And it's more empowering to the individual too, because there's no reason for the government to exist without us. We put them there, yet the people have seemed to become so scared of removing them. I mean, it's such a difficult conversation too, because I don't want to go stray too far down this rabbit hole, because just the politics of anything, especially at scale, becomes such a difficult model to break down, because the power is totally lost upon the people. I saw a very fascinating thing happen in these smaller communities. And even an article I read today where the Mexican farmers had dragged the mayor out of his office and tied him behind the truck and drove him behind and dragged him behind their truck on the roads that he said he was going to fix but didn't fix. And I was like, yeah, go, because there's this real big disconnect between, like, you're in a small community. If you do something like where I live in Costa Rica, there's only about 1,000 people out there, and if you go and screw around with people, it's game over for you and your reputation out there. But at scale, these things don't have as big of an effect on the individual person. I think
Exactly. But you don't, because the larger you are, let's just put it this way, the higher you are in these government hierarchies, the less accountability naturally you'll have, because you're so disconnected from the real world and real people's voices. You're sitting in these iron halls, but these these ivory halls in DC, Washington, or whatever the capital of your country is, and they're so disconnected. And so, when you said, hey, they took this farmer out and said, hey, these are the roads you're supposed to fix, bro, take a good look at them. Like, I mentally, I applauded too, because that's real accountability. Hey, we're a community of 1,000 people. We said that you're going to be the best person to help kind of congeal us together, and you made a promise that you're going to fix these roads. Well, 999 of us are waiting. Fix the roads. What do we need to do to help? But you can't have that with a politician that's over in DC or over in your capital. There's just no access to them, and they don't care. They're so disconnected. So I'm totally with you. Local governments, where you can influence things, and I think that's where blockchain and Bitcoin can really shine in the future. Maybe you and I will live to see it, maybe not, but I'm pushing for it and I'm supporting it. And anyone out there that has the gumption to do something about it, make sure you check out Tiho and check out myself. We'll encourage you to keep doing it, because we're not doing it.
Yeah, well, it's one of these things too, because I think, I don't know if you surf or anything, but when you're a surfer, you can see the waves coming, and you kind of know you don't want to necessarily catch the first one or two waves, because that if you get wiped out, the rest of the waves are going to take you out afterwards. So you wait till the end of the set to come in before you try anything crazy. And I don't want to put Ross Albright up there, but if you try to catch some of the first waves and you get taken out by them, it's not a fun game to be a part of, because you have all this massive amount of weight that's coming down to crash on you. So, the governance sector is one of these things where if we go out and we try to catch these waves right now, it can come crashing down on our heads and be horrible for us as individuals. So it's more of a, we're the dreamers of these ideas, and whether we see them come to fruition in our life is irrelevant. But it's almost like the writing of the book 1984. We're able to see enough of what's coming in the future to take notes about, well, this is the way it's going to go, because I think we're headed back to the importance of that, not the tribal community. That's maybe a bit too aggressive, because I think there's a large amount of participation and collaboration that needs to take place at a larger scale, and acceptance as well. But the function of a community at a small level, its economic development, like you're saying, it doesn't really leave that little area. And whether they have their own coin or not, people, like even today, people like to put, oh, this bench is hosted by this person. It's like, you could walk up with your phone, you could check out who built the roads or who built the bridges, right. And they would have staked their names and their tokens on the individual infrastructure of these communities. You get all these weird visions of what this stuff can do, but how far out that is, who really knows?
But I think there's a small, and I'll let you continue on here for a second, but I think people don't remember. Actually, I think it's impossible for people to remember because none of us were around. But there aren't great texts, like really simple to consume texts that remind us of how the state was born, of how local economies were born, of how your local township was born, your local municipality, your local, they were all born from generally often than not, well-to-do individuals who decided to supplant themselves and their family and maybe their extended family in this parcel of land, and they grew a community, and their community started investing locally and fixing the roads, creating infrastructure, creating lights, creating factories, creating systems of employment, and so every township on the planet, every small town on the planet started through local governance and working together. And so like we forget that this is how it all began. Now we have these monstrosities of politics and monstrosities of governments that overrule, rule everything. But it all started small. And I think Bitcoin and blockchain, you use the word tribal. I don't think that's an illegitimate word to use. I think we can move back to a tribal mentality, not with the aggression, but tribes had to trade. Tribes had to work as communities with other communities to work and to live. There were some tribes that were over by the sea. They could get all the fish. You were more inland, so you traded them for pelts, or something like that. Like this is not. We have not, as a human species, we have not grown outside of bartering and trade as communities. And so, with the digital economy, it actually makes it easier to now barter and trade. And what's fascinating is that with all the technology that we have today, it is still hard to do peer-to-peer transactions online. People say, oh, Craigslist. Oh, no. It's still hard to do it online. And I know that there's a better way to do it. I haven't figured it out yet, but there is a better way to do digital trade online without all the intermediaries, all the constraints, all the verification mechanisms, and all the companies and corporations that are listening in. We can remove all of that BS and bullshit. There is a way to go peer-to-peer, true peer-to-peer. And Bitcoin and blockchain really is the answer to that. I just don't know how it's going to work just yet.
Yeah, these technologies are going to eat up every single sector that we know of because they're just more efficient. It's only a matter of time, I think, really. So I agree with you 100% here. And we get to watch it. And as you're growing and building, we are a part of it. So for everyone out there, some of the things that's been really valuable for me is understanding that your time here on this planet is useful to other people. Being in service to other individuals is one of the most rewarding things you can do. So whether it's in a small community or you can create products and services that extend their hands out and influence billions of people, it's about creating and sharing these visions that really move the needle and push us forward. Peter, it's been such a pleasure to chat with you. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I didn't really know where we were going to go. We were just going to improv, and I've loved where the improvisation has taken us so far.
It's been, and that is as I told you, that's something that I enjoy. That's something that I enjoy, and I want to do more. So thanks so much for the opportunity to open our mind. Now, I know, because I've done research on you, that you talk to all sorts of different people, and so like, I just had a question for you, if you don't mind.
Oh yes,
my question for you, because I've watched your videos. What is a topic now? And I think I can speak for you here, but I want to hear from your own words. What is a topic that you really love to talk about? What's something that you would love to dive in a little bit more, and maybe I could share a little bit of my world in regards to what you enjoy. So.
Okay, so I'll bridge this question by I guess prefacing the reason why I have the podcast in the first place. I love talking and sharing and listening to people that have different viewpoints than me. I learned very quickly that the things that I do know, they're very few, and I know them well. And there are lots of other people that can give me insight on a numerous amount of other things. So I've had great guests like Bruce Lipton, the epigenetics father, Thomas Campbell. We've had Dean Radin. I've got the author who wrote the book DMT, the Spirit Molecule, coming on in November as well. And yesterday, this podcast hasn't gone out yet, but I did a podcast with the man Leif Cox, and this is bridging me into what really interests me and what drew me to this space, not just Bitcoin itself, but into business and what we call right livelihood and conscious capitalism. So Leif Cox started a group called the Orangutan Project, and they now have 800,000 hectares of protected rainforest here in Sumatra and in Indonesia. And one of the things that's fascinated me about technology in general and decentralization comes in this process too. And I'll explain it with a quick quote that Andy Warhol says that, you get the same Coca-Cola the Queen drinks. So the mechanization of product has really evened the playing field. The fact that you and I can have a channel and an audience, we've got microphones and cameras, and I've got a little LED light, and the whole production aspect has been pushed out because technology is inherently deflationary. So when I started to stumble into meditating about, what's right livelihood and what can we do with conscious capitalism, I started aiming very specifically at the charity sector. Now, the reason being is it's inherently flawed in the, not that the people aren't doing amazing things or that their focus and goals aren't reaching the sky, but we limit charity by giving them a different business model. And the business model is a very easy place to solve because we just need to make them for-profit companies that do good in the world and that are able to scale through marketing, through incentivizing intelligent CEOs and marketing teams, operations managers, to continue to do that good. So, the conversation we had earlier this week with Leif Cox about the orangutan project is really close to my heart in a company that kind of stemmed outside of Arcane Bear, which was originally why I started this channel, was to actually try to do more conservation and humanitarian and environmental work. And I see there's a bridge between these two worlds too, because in the term, if you scale out from a little bit, I mean, our focus is pretty much specifically on environmental and animal conservation right now, because it's something that's close to me. I love living in nature. I love animals. But it also very quickly stems up to humanitarianism and education. I've long thought that the blockchain sector could do amazing things, not just in terms of remittance for disaster relief, but for dropship economy. You can basically bring an economy that's been destroyed and give them the tools to restart their own governance systems, to give them their own money. And these are some of the early visions I had in 2016 that led me to start Arcane Bear. Now, the difficult part is when I was trying to create this idea as a whole, I realized explaining disrupting charity was difficult as enough as it is to include blockchain. It's like we're not there yet. So we ended up creating a new brand called Rivers of the Sky, and that's why I'm over here in Indonesia and close to the Borneo and Sumatra rainforest right now, because these are one of the most eclectic and, I guess, widespread biodiverse places on the planet aside from the Amazon. So making sure that we protect, build, and regrow these forests here is extremely important. So, the Arcane Bear and Rivers of the Sky, the focus is to actually use media and use these technologies to reshape the way we understand charity by creating a profitable brand and hopefully incorporating technology too, because then that allows us to scale way beyond my wildest dreams, I'm sure. But even at a small scale model, with Arcane Bear, we've gone out, we've visited orphanages, we've done some turtle conservation stuff, and that's what we spend our extra marketing dollars on, is going to do good in the world. And I think that this wave of consistent change in corporate social responsibility, and again, the term I like, and it comes from Buddha originally, is the eightfold path to enlightenment, was right livelihood. And my mentors call it conscious capitalism or sacred capitalism. And it's the idea that you can be extremely profitable being in service to others. And I think a lot of people, and myself included when I was younger, saw capitalism as feeding off of the disenfranchised or the peripheralized. And the stories that kind of went untold were the ones that where people were building products and services that were really valuable to other people. Maybe it was like a local honey company that does a few $1 million a year, and they just never got the voice because they're not clickbait stuff. So, we're at this really interesting intersection right now where we can use technology, media, and the stories of the philanthropic space to productize and scale out doing good in the world. So that's my main focus. And that's where I hope we can achieve that marriage between media, technology, doing good, and the blockchain sector, because the remittances and the ability to give people dropship economies, especially after disaster relief stuff, we're talking about disrupting multi-billion-dollar companies that have not in over 100 years once changed.
Yes. And thank you so much for everything you just said, because I know that my listeners might not know this about you. I've done enough research to know that you have a conservationist kind of leaning, and that you care a lot about charities and charitable giving and environmental conservation, these types of things. So I'm so glad that you said all that, because my listeners might not have known that. And that's what I wanted to hear from you, because that's what I've kind of gleaned from my research and the work that you've done. This is so important. And I believe, Tiho, that digital, I'm going to something you didn't say, but I'm going to add to your verbal dictionary here.
Please do.
With blockchain and Bitcoin, we now have something that I didn't coin this term, but I'm probably one of the first ones to use it years ago. Digital conservation. Right now, we have issues with history. And this is something that is close to my heart. The issue with history is all fake. It's all rewritten. There's no digital conservation that's happening. And we're finding that with the revisionist history, especially Wikipedia, if you do any research, Wikipedia is really only edited by like 8 people. like we talk about centralization of information from what something's supposed to be crowdsourced. It should be. If you think of I think most people think that when they look at Wikipedia that they have this banner up there that says millions of people have donated. People interpret that wrong. Millions of people have donated to Wikipedia. Yes. Have millions of people contributed to Wikipedia? No. It's a very limited injection of information by a select funnel. And so I've been seeing, and this is something that's been attention in the last couple of years or so, it's digital conservation and ensuring that people groups, histories, cultures are conserved for what they were, and then 10 years later the history isn't rewritten into something that is politically advantageous for that dictator who's steamrolling over that country right now and saying, oh, by the 20 years ago they were mistreating X, Y, and Z and killing X, Y, and Z and destroying X, Y, and Z. But if we look back into the blockchain of that history of that culture, which is what I'm a big supporter of, like Everpedia, which is a blockchain project, is a competitor, I guess, to Wikipedia. Like, I support them because they are truly having digital conservation of what happened. My kids, your kids, they might look back at the early 2000s up to 2020 and be like, wow, the Wikipedia tells us that this was the age, I'm making this up, it was the age of Obama and everything was grand. And you and I, in our 70s and 80s, we're like, that's not how I remembered it, or it's the age of Trump, or whoever pick somebody, right? And that's not how I remember it. That's not how I saw it. And so a big thing for me, and I'm glad that you're talking about this around conservation, is digital conservation. And so that's where I believe that blockchain can have a powerful, powerful impact to ensure that cultures and history is remembered and documented appropriately instead of revised later. So I don't know if that's something that you've touched on or something that you've crossed paths with, but that's something that's deep in my heart, because I know that most history, I mean, we could go way back. Like, can I just say, like the pyramids, please stop giving us bullshit. Stop giving us bullshit. Those things were powerful things. I have no idea what they were supposed to be really for, but I'm telling you, there are things of history in which we are not being told the truth about, and I believe it's retarding our ability as a people, as a world, to move forward. Like, we should have, and I don't want to go too far here, but you brought it out of me here. Like, we should have anti-gravity. We should have free. Peter. We should have free energy. We should, like, these things were created. They were experimented on hundreds of years ago. Like, why am I still slave to paying a fucking Comcast bill? I should be able to suck this through the ether myself, the digital matrix or whatever. So I get frustrated with history. I get frustrated with what kids are learning. I get frustrated with the fact that nothing from the past is truly what it really was, and that we're being fed through a funnel of media lies about who we, I think this is the deeper point, and I'll end here. We're being fed lies about who we really are. We're being fed lies about who we truly can be. And we're being fed lies about the lack of power that we have. I disagree with all of this. You and I are both extremely powerful balls of energy vibrating, and I think you and I are vibrating at a higher level. And so, like, if people woke up to the realization that you and I are a bunch of vibrating waves that can intersect and vibrate on levels and connect on powerful levels and healing levels, like, how the world could be changed. So I'm going to end right there. But I know that you know what I'm talking about.
It's a beautiful sentiment. And for anyone that's done research into some of these topics too, Robert Schoch, Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, to name a few, the realization that even if, Peter, I've tried to come to a conclusion to why I think we may have been lied to. And just as an example,
please tell me.
Because I try to figure out, I try to imagine everyone's got like a good heart to some degree, right? And what I think might be one of the cases is that aside from we could be akin to amnesic goldfish swimming around on this planet, because it seems very likely that there was a massive civilization here around 13,000 years ago. They were more technologically advanced than we are today. Whatever remnants that our governments and our institutions, history books have found, probably found it, tried to figure it out, couldn't figure it out, and went, well, what the do we do? And then just like, I guess we just turn on the printing presses and hope for the best and dig some holes, because if they couldn't have survived it, what chance do we have? And that's one of the difficult questions, is because 13,000 years ago, it was a cataclysm. You have Greta on screen being like, oh, we're entering the sixth mass extinction. It's like, well, where did these extinctions come from? Because we weren't here at this capacity last 5 times. So what's brought us to these cataclysmic extinctions before? And are they cyclical? Do they repeat in any type of recurring time frame? And if they do, has anyone ever survived them? And what I like about, and we'll bridge back to the technology sector of things, I've seen a company, well, not a company, but a chain named Flow or Florin Coin. Well, they created something, and they kind of tipped their hat to the Library of Alexandria, which is one of the great libraries of the last few thousand years. And when we lost that, we lost a lot of the human recollection and history, like a lot of the stuff Plato references about Atlantis from his teachers.
Oh, yeah.
His name. That was all, you could find that all in the Library of Alexandria at the time. So
I think a lot of that's in the Vatican now.
Yeah, who knows? It's very likely that it's hidden from us on purpose. But even if it's not, the loss of this information is detrimental, because it doesn't let us know our true origin of being born of basically the stars, for lack of a better word right now. And that's an incredibly empowering thing when you understand and start to, even if you just break outside of the box in your mind a little bit and be like, what if we came here, what if we were part of the creation and possible even flora and fauna creation process on this planet? Even today we're getting to manipulate genetics and grow things out of nothing. So it's not necessarily that far-fetched to think that we may have been a part of the creation of some of this stuff, and if we weren't, maybe someone else was. And these types of questions, I think, are so rarely asked, because critical thinking is not well, it's not necessarily praised either, because it means you and I have to argue a little bit, at least to find out, who believes what the most. And that's a really important part, I think, that people don't understand. We become so invested in what we think or who we think we are, that we are very standoffish against anything else. And it's probably human nature, because it's actually beneficial as a human being to remain consistent and committed to whatever it is you invested in, so that way people can trust you to be who it is that you are. And we've used that as this part of our evolutionary toolkit to create societies in the first place. So, I try to not imagine that it's the Illuminati or whatever crazy thing, because I don't think that they exist in the way people think they do. I've studied a lot of Aleister Crowley and Kabbalah texts, and although they were brilliant, genius people, what they were expressing was ancient, archaic knowledge, or arcane knowledge, I guess, for this idea, because it was all mysterious. It's all kind of hidden. We don't actually know. But what we have remnants of is, as far as I can tell, fairly indicative of a type of proof to some degree that whatever civilization was here 13,000 years ago, they were way better at building shit than we are today.
Oh, totally. And that's why your efforts, and that's why it was really important for me to at least kind of pull that out of you a little bit here. That's why your efforts in conservation of the world, let's just put it that way, your efforts in conservation of the world, and my particular leaning in digital conservation is so important, because if the physical environment gets destroyed, then we're not going to be able to uncover those truths. And if we don't have digital conservation, then when we do find out those powerful things that there were giants 30 feet tall, like, I want to know about it. I want to know about why there were creatures that are twice as tall as me roaming the world. I want to know what happened. You know, you say 13. I'm not a scholar in any of this stuff. Or, yeah, I want to know what happened. I want to know why we're so limited in today's knowledge. And for me personally, just from a personal standpoint, I know that you can resonate with what I'm about to say. So for me personally, I want to unlock all the achievements in this, pound of flesh. I want to unlock all the achievements. I want the game genie. I want to know how to vibrate at the highest levels. I want to know how to be able to project, call it astral projection, my future, and be able to make it real. And I want other people to be able to do that too. And the reason I say it might sound arcane for me to say that, but I know it's true. I know energy is real. I know waves are real. I know all of this stuff is real. I do have a scientific background in that regard, but like, this is what I really care about: unlocking human potential, rising the tide for all the world, allowing people that get access to their inner soul, their inner heart, to be able to be truly who they are. Like, one of the biggest frustrations, Tiho, is as when I was a corporate consultant for 12 plus years, is I saw slaves every day, corporate slaves, mental slaves every day, who when I look at these people and I love on these people and I say, you are so great. You are so powerful. There's so much potential in this. And I look at them and they're so constrained to a percent of their potential. And I find that the jail of the mind, the cell of the mind, is just like, I've always been interested in helping people broaden their horizons, broaden their views, so they can realize that they truly, literally, are the most powerful battery in the world, and you can shape your world. You can live a full and powerful and connected, I think that's important, connected life to the environment, to the spirits, to the energy, to other people. It doesn't have to be fucking going to work and then after work going and watching CNN for 4 hours a day. Like, there's got to be more to life than that, right, Tio?
Yeah, I would put a bet on DMT being one of the strongest technologies that we have around.
Oh, please. Oh, can I ask? I don't know if this is fair. You can cut this off if it needs to be edited out. But I have been really intrigued into DMT, and I'm going to ask you. You don't have to answer. Have you done the 3, 4, 5, 7 day, whatever it is, DMT experience of killing the ego and finding, I'll just leave it there, killing the ego and finding the new self? Have you experienced that? Because I've been really, really curious about it.
Yes. So I'll preface this. As I said, I've got the author and the doctor who did the book DMT, the Spirit Molecule. He also, and I'm actually currently reading and listening to the second book he did called DMT, the Soul Prophecy, which is really interesting because he combines the Kabbalistic mysticism around the Judaic and Hebrew culture, which is vastly overlooked in terms of the value that they portray, not just, and I think more specifically, mathematically speaking, there's a lot of stuff that goes over most people's heads, which would take up an entire podcast onto its own. But when I was around 15 years old, I started studying sacred plant medicines. And one of the reasons why I dropped out of school and started hitchhiking to Central America is because when I was going through this process, my initial dissertation, because I was writing at what I would consider PhD level quality in grade 10, was the biological underpinnings of religiosity, and that there are whether they're endogenous or ingested forms of psychedelics, altered states that were formed through meditation and heavy breathing exercises, because of the effects that this has on the software, the hardware system of the human body, that most religious experiences and in forms of enlightenment or near-death moments where people met gods or demons or angels or deities, whatever it might have been, these were all, again, either endogenous, altered states, or again, ingested forms of a psychedelic of some kind. And then I was like, oh, I'm a criminal. the school system sees me as a criminal for studying all this stuff. So I dropped out of school and I hitchhiked to Central America, and I ended up living in Guatemala for about 5 or 6 years. So I studied ayahuasca specifically around
Ooh.
the age of 19. I got the chance to sit with a shaman. So ayahuasca is a mix of two Amazonian plants. One of them is called ayahuasca, or more literally known as the Banisteriopsis vine, and chacruna, which is the plant that contains the DMT, or the dimethyltryptamine. And these two together are a very unique combination, because normally when you ingest the chacruna or DMT, your body actually gets rid of it through the digestion process and the enzymes in your stomach to actually keep you safe. So you have a
Right.
natural.
Isn't one a part of those plants to remove that protective
Yeah. So that's
barrier or something so that
ayahuasca.
it, yeah.
So the
Yeah.
ayahuasca is a monoamino oxidase inhibitor, which actually turns off the the amino acids basically in your stomach. So for instance, if you were to drink the ayahuasca vine or the Banisteriopsis vine by itself and then drink a cup of coffee, that coffee would be around 400% stronger, because normally the amino acids help regulate the psychoactives that go into
Mm.
your bloodstream. So coffee is actually psychoactive. So is chocolate. There are a few other ones that we regularly ingest. That's why people call chocolate the kind of love drug, is because it literally changes your brain chemistry. But when you ingest an MAOI, as it's known for short, and then one of these substances, it's hundreds and hundreds of percent stronger than if you had not ingested it with the MAOI. So when you take the dimethyltryptamine with the monoamino oxidase inhibitor, you have this very unique, very fast onrush of a psychedelic experience. So I drank the first night I sat with and here's an important part too. Let's use it almost like a Lamborghini, right? If you were to get into some badass car, the driver is like the shaman, the car is like the trip, and the music
Right.
is the engine of this vehicle. You need a very beautiful combination of each of these things for your ride to go well. And if you want it to go really well, they need to be like pushed to the
In
max.
harmony.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they need to be really, really good at these things. So I've studied in Iquitos, Peru, with a bunch of different shamans over the course of a few years. This was before I started getting into business. Once I realized that as a shaman, and this is a kind of an abstraction, but I've probably taken ayahuasca about 20 times, but I only needed to do it the first time I did it, I thought I was a rock star. I'm like, I feel like get drinking, anyways, floored me. And after that, what I realized is that I don't need to go that far. A valuable part of what we do as human beings is actually being a part of the ceremony of life and being able to communicate and bring valuable things to the table. And when you're floored like that, you don't get the opportunity to really be a part of the ceremony. So I spent the next 4 years sitting with shamans throughout the jungles of the Amazon, studying ayahuasca and what's known as San Pedro. And that's a whole nother family of cactus that contains mescaline and penethylamine. But I guess the highlighting point of this is that if anyone's interested, the studying aspect is really interesting, because the musical component is one of the most powerful parts of the medicine, because the medicine, what allows the process to do is basically disassociate the mind from the body. Once you do that, the music is one of the most powerful forms of medicine we have, because it can get into the microcosm of the human vibrational experience that the medicine can't. So normally where the brain holds on too tight, or the spirit holds on too tightly to the body, the dimethyltryptamine creates this kind of lucid perception of each of them. So the music can go in and do massive amounts of healing in areas that even today we don't, people are like, oh, it cured this, it cured that. And it's like, well, there's no scientific evidence for it. Well, it's likely because when you disassociate the spirit from the body at such an intense level, kind of miraculous things happen. So I've had a lot of experience with DMT, oddly enough. There are many different kinds of it. You can get it from the acacia tree. You can get it from, I grow Mimosa hostilis on my property. I grow ayahuasca on my property in Costa Rica as well.
That's awesome.
And these plants are just profoundly powerful, to the point where my conclusion is akin to that of Dr. Rick Strassman's, which these are likely ancient technologies that are left over from that 13,000 year ago cycle, and we're just now rediscovering, oh, you wanted it because the other interesting thing here, and maybe we'll cut this out because we're going off into a total fucking rabbit hole here.
I don't care. I love it.
What's interested me about this particular idea is that I don't think we can necessarily leave our solar system in terms of physical travel the way we think it's possible. I think you need to be able to very, very heavily disassociate the mind from the body, and the physical body that the human species currently inhabits is much, much too connected. That's why they call it the beast body. It's a very deep bond. You can let go and you can just leave, from what I've seen. There's been clinical tests done where if someone wants to leave their body, there doesn't have to be anything wrong with them, and they might just decide to die. And it's not that they had anything physically wrong. It was a choice of spirit to leave. So one of the conjectures that I've felt is that the likelihood of us being intergalactic is probably right at our fingertips, and it's by using these technologies that opened our mind to perceive the ability to travel without having to take the body with you. Also, again, I would lean into the argument likely too that we do have technology to some degree that can take us to places much faster and manipulate gravity that is just totally unseen to what we know today. Although
there has to be.
Yeah. I mean, Bob Lazar's story just has from day one has had too many things come true where it's hard. You know, the point of science for my mind is like, well, if we can't disprove it, it becomes more true. It's not about trying to prove it. And over the years, it's been harder and harder to try to disprove his story. And he's had some really, really kind of bullseye calls like element 115 that you shouldn't necessarily be able to figure out by chance. And that in itself, if it's not by chance, it seems more likely that it was by experience, I guess is one of the words I would use. So, you know, this is such a fascinating area of discussion too, because the bridge between these two worlds of the ancient cultures and the technology I think they were using to do a lot of their travel, as well as at the same time, I think one of the things scientifically holding us back is the removal of consciousness from our scientific experiments and from the technology that we create.
That's a very powerful, very, very powerful point. And I think we are, and I say we is the world. I have no idea really what the trajectory is, but I feel like that the world is opening itself up. The global conscious is opening itself up to the realities that are conscious. And I forget who coined this term, but what was it called? The divine matrix, right? The divine matrix around us and being able to connect with other people with energy and all that stuff. Like, I think people are slowly beginning to realize that this really is a fact. It is really scientifically based, and there are opportunities for our minds to be expanded upwards, downwards, left and right. And I think the important part, and I think this is where most people start to space out and say, oh, they're going and talking about the ephemeral. They're not talking about this crazy digital matrix and interacting with energy. Like, what I want to tell everyone out there is that these topics, if you want to get self-educated, because it's so important, because we're talking to two self-educated individuals. That's why we're having these conversations. Because I wrote it down. You were kicked out of school basically for self-education. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So the schools don't want you to learn. They don't want you to self-educate. And for everyone out there learning about these types of stuff, DMT, ayahuasca, mind-opening opportunities to look and use music and all sorts of stuff, this makes you a better human being. This makes you a better person. It makes you better adaptable to the variables, pains of life. It allows you to connect to those pains and leverage those pains and not have them be regret. It allows you to take those pains, bless the pains, bless the hurts, bless the variables of life, bless the deaths, bless the beginnings, bless everything. Like, having these types of conversations, and I know you're laughing because you're resonating with this, I'm sure, is that like these types of conversations, I hope if anyone's out there listening, I want you to get at least a little bit intrigued about some of the words that you might, that Tiho has used, and some words that I've used that you're like, I don't even know what the hell that means. Good. Look it up. you'll become a better person. You'll become a better citizen of the world for it. And I think in a lot of ways, Bitcoin and blockchain, in some ways, is kind of a gateway drug to going out in. Actually, if I were to follow the kind of the thin line of my life, I would say that in many ways, Bitcoin and blockchain was a catalyst for opening up my mind to these alternate realities, the alternate opportunities, this people would call new age thinking, but I think it's old age thinking. We just have lost it. But I think Bitcoin and blockchain can certainly be a gateway drug, opening your mind into, wow, if sovereignty over value, sovereignty over my own money really is possible, then maybe sovereignty over my own mind, sovereignty over my own thoughts, sovereignty over how I'm moving through this astral plane. Maybe I have more control over my mental, physical, and spiritual destiny than I thought. I'll leave it there.
Beautiful. Well, Peter, I've had a pleasure of a time chatting with you. We got along smashingly, and I believe this is the beginning of a lifelong friendship. I just want to say I'll keep on at the end of this. I'd love to chat actually a little more on a few side topics, but thank you to all the Bear family. If anyone's made it, I'm going to post the whole podcast. We'll cut it up. There's a few little tidbits in here. Maybe I'll post the secondary information. But for anyone that's made it through the entire podcast, hats off to you. We've done now an hour and 10 minutes. We're getting into serious podcast talking territory. Next, we're going to start talking about MMA if we went any farther. So we got to make sure we cut it short for a little bit. Remember to give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Check out all of Peter's channels. We will have them listed down in the links below. Leave your comments, your thoughts, your questions about anything that you might have heard and been confused about. Also, I am often confused about the things I talk about, so that's fair enough. Don't feel obtrusive by doing so. And I want to leave it with a very, very similar sentiment, and it's a quote of mine that I've very much so enjoyed. Ladies and gentlemen, be grateful for all that you have, even your problems, because one day you won't have those either.
Thanks so much for inviting me on. And you know what? Let's be intentional. I'd love to be on with you in the future.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it on the, hopefully we'll hang out. We'll get you to Bali or Costa Rica, because I'm not allowed where you live anymore.
Well, thanks again.
Beautiful.